But it is 8 o'clock, and so let's get this started. Hello, everybody. And my name is Rose Roby. I'm the campaign manager for Matthew Ho for US Senate, and I'll be hosting tonight. And mainly what I'm going to do is introduce two people who really don't need introduction. I'll do it anyways, but these are two celebrated anti-war voices who have fought a lifetime for peace and have taken on power in ways that have put themselves at risk, but they've done that to make a better world. So first thing I'm going to do is do introductions, and then I'm just going to tell you the format slightly, and then the floor will be all theirs. One moment. My apologies. Here we go. Okay, first let me introduce to you Medea Benjamin. Medea Benjamin is the co-founder of the woman-led peace group Code Pink and the co-founder of the human rights group Global Exchange. She's been an advocate for social justice for more than 40 years. Described as one of America's most committed and most effective fighters for human rights by New York Newsday, and one of the high-profile leaders of the peace movement by the Los Angeles Times. She was one of 1,000 exemplary women from 140 countries nominated to receive the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of the millions of women who do the essential work of peace worldwide. She's the author of 10 books, including Drone Warfare, Killing by Remote Control, and Kingdom of the Unjust, Behind the US-Saudi Connection. Her most recent book, Inside Iran, The Real History and Politics of the Islamic Republic of Iran, is part of a campaign to prevent war with Iran and instead promote normal trade and diplomatic relations. And we're very honored to have her here tonight. And of course, Matthew Ho. Matt is a candidate for the 2022 North Carolina Green Party nomination for US Senate. In 2009, Matt resigned in protest from his post in Afghanistan with the State Department over the American escalation of the war. In 2010, Matt was named the Ridenhour Prize recipient for truth-telling. I hope I said that right. But imagine having a US Senator who has been celebrated for truth-telling. That's would be an unusual thing, given who our US Senate is. Matt's writings have appeared online and in online and print periodicals such as Huffington Post, USA Today, The Wall Street Journal, and The Washington Post. He's been a guest on hundreds of news programs on radio and television networks, including CBS, CNN, MSNBC, NPR, the BBC, and PBS. So we have two amazing guests tonight, amazing speakers who have put it all on the line for peace. And I'm going to give the floor over to them. I just want people to know to put their questions into the chat, and I will, be within approximately a half hour. I don't want to cut any discussions too short, but we'll have a Q&A section. Unfortunately, just due to timing, I probably won't be able to get to everyone's question, but I will do what I can to get as many questions in as possible. And so please leave your questions, and we'll be doing that within about a half hour. We'll spend a half hour on question and answer time. So with all of that said, I will get out of your way and give the floor over to Medea Benjamin and Matt Ho. Medea, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on. It's a great honor. And when I first heard you were running, Matt, I thought, wow, that's fantastic, because it is a platform for speaking to people like we're doing tonight, a platform for energizing people, a platform for moving the other people running to a more sane position than they probably have now. And so maybe I could start off asking you the basic question of why you decided to run, how you feel it's going so far, and who are you running against?
Okay. Thanks, Medea. That was it's a very good lead in, because I have something I wanted to say to you, and it's an honor to have you here. This is the first time we've done this. So you being the first guest, it means a lot to me that you are the first guest. And I'm going to explain that in a second why. But I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you all showing up to support the campaign. You asked how the campaign was going. The campaign's going very well. We are meeting a lot of enthusiasm. When we're out petitioning, because we have to get on the ballot, and that's, I think, that the thing most people need to understand is we're not on the ballot yet. We have to collect signatures by pen and paper to get on the ballot. So we need help. And if people want to come out and support us, including if you are out of state and you want to come here and support us, help get us signatures to get us on the ballot, we can get you here. So please, if you're interested in helping the campaign, reach out to the campaign. The website is MatthewHoforSenate.org. And you can find all kinds of ways that you can contribute. And of course, donations. This is a fundraiser, so I have to put out the thing about the donations. But the campaign in general is meeting a lot of enthusiasm across the board. When we're out petitioning, one of the things I've noticed, and one of the things I hear from people, is that when someone says, well, who's this petition for? And they say Green Party, more often than not, even if the person doesn't agree with us politically, they're excited about the idea of a third party. They're excited about something that's going to change the system. They're excited about something that's different, that's not captured by money, that's not beholden to the corporations and the banks, that is for working families, for peace, for the planet. So it is going really well. And I think one of the things that I'm enjoying most about this is that the people I come into contact with constantly, whether they're on my campaign team, whether they're people we meet in the streets, whether it's people, online, the good intentions that they have. These are all people who want to see real change, because most of us come to this with these personal experiences. And that's what's motivating me to be here, is my personal experiences, the people I know who are suffering, the people in my life who don't have health care, or who are underinsured. And so their healthcare decisions are decided by how much money is in their checking account, right? The number of people I know who have loved ones who have been lost to overdose, that's a long, long list. And it's heartbreaking because of all the futures that have been shattered, because we have a war on drugs in this country that treats addiction and substance abuse issues as if they're criminal issues rather than public health issues, and on and on. We were talking a little bit earlier about housing costs and about, just cost of fuel, and how many people I know who every month it's a question of whether or not they're going to make it with a positive balance in their checking account. So those are the things that motivate me to be here. But the connection with you, Medea, is that, so as people know, I resigned in protest from State Department in 2009. And for about a year and a half, I was out doing the think tank thing, going to these conferences in DC, going to speak at schools across the country. I was on the television, and one day, this is around about 11 years ago, Medea, I don't know if you remember this or not. And I'm with Ray McGovern, the great Ray McGovern, at like this event at the National Press Club. So we're very serious. Right. We're at the National Press Club, right? All that nonsense, that DC establishment nonsense. And afterwards, Ray and I go get a cup of coffee. I don't even remember what we were doing there, but I remember going to get coffee with Ray. And Ray says to me, "What are you doing afterwards? What are you going to do next?" And I said, "I don't know. I got nothing going on." And he says, "Come with me. We're going to the White House." And I said, "What are we going to the White House for?" He said, "Because Code Pink is there and they're doing an event and you need to be part of it." And so my first thought was, oh my God, Code Pink's not serious. I was just at the National Press Club and now I got to go hang out with Code Pink. They're not serious. And So I go and I'm there, I'm standing outside and hang on, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, if Rose, if you can make it so I can share screen, but anyway, and I meet up with you all and there is, here we go. Thank you, Rose. How well people can see this photo, but this is from about 11 years ago, springtime in DC. And there's Medea, there's Diane Baker, there's Ray McGovern, Leslie Harris, Ann Wright. I don't know, I can't recognize who that gentleman is. And there's me looking very serious in my Brooks Brothers raincoat and, you know, like a complete fill in the blank, however you guys want to describe it. But what happened here was I was listening to you guys and all the things that you were saying and where I had just come from, right, with this at the National Press Club and all the very serious nature of the thing, right? And then here I am outside with you guys. And what I'm realizing as I'm listening to you all talk is that you are intellectually and morally honest. Unlike the events I have been to, unlike the institutions I have been a part of, unlike the entire culture and establishment of the foreign policy community in Washington, D.C., you folks standing out there in front of the White House were intellectually and morally honest in what you were saying and how you were acting. And I remember, Medea, I was standing there and you just handed me the microphone. And honest to God, this is my first act of activism, was when you handed me that microphone. So what am I doing here? I don't know if you want credit for this, Medea. You may be like, oh my God, I helped start this, you know, but I'm here because you handed me that microphone. Because Ray McGovern said, come on, we're going over there. So good people, intellectually and morally honest people bringing me along is why I'm here. So that's why it was so important for me to have you on, and really makes for me to have you as the first one of these different webinars we're going to do, for you to be the first guest. This is why this is really important to me. So thank you, Medea, for everything you've done for me, for, you know, inspiring me, but also too, like just handing me that microphone. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, how did you get to this point? How did you get into activism? You know, what was it that kind of, what were the things that brought you to where you are?
Well, thank you for sharing that story. I do remember you coming and thinking, wow, you know, he's kind of straight-laced. Is he going to be okay? But when I look at the picture, it's funny because we're not all crazy in our pink with some, you know, wild visuals going on. It looked like a little bit, you know, more straight-laced protest that you could join. And I do remember how impressed we all were hearing you talk. And that's how I feel every time I hear you talk. You have such a depth of knowledge, and being able to use that in the ways that you have been doing it really adds so much to the movement. And as you well know, people who have been in the military in our society have a lot more credibility than those of us who never joined. And people who've been in the State Department have more credibility, and especially when they resign. I know I hold you and Ann Wright up as wonderful role models. I don't know if you saw Ann Wright's recent piece that she wrote asking for people in the Russian military to resign. But it was a beautiful piece that she recalled, you know, her own trajectory. And I think it's very close to your own. And mine was kind of simple. I mean, I grew up, I was in high school during the days of the Vietnam War. And I have a story that was my aha moment, which is when my sister, older sister by 2 years, her boyfriend went off to Vietnam and started writing her letters every month that got kind of weirder and weirder. And about 6 months in, sent her the ear of a Viet Cong to wear around her neck as a necklace. And I went in the bathroom and threw up and became an anti-war activist at the age of about 15, and organized in my high school, and was and then connected with the anti-war movement in throughout New York State where I was living, and joined actually in a campaigns of people who were running on anti-war tickets, and joined in the local Students for Democratic Society. So, you know, it was a pretty amazing time to grow up, and there was so much to be part of. And our movement was so vibrant, and it was led by young people. And I have always felt that movements need to be led by young people. And it's one of our problems today in an anti-war movement where so many of us are from older generations, that we need to get young people involved. And a silver lining perhaps in all of this now, it will be that more people are aware of war and the horrors of war, because they're actually seeing it on their TV screens around Ukraine, unlike during the Iraq or the Afghan days, or what's happening in Yemen. And, you know, maybe that gives us an opening. But my feeling has always been, you know, I studied public health and nutrition as a way to travel around the world and give something back and be part of building and caring for people and nurturing. But everywhere I went, in Africa, Latin America, Middle East, I saw war and realized that I was kind of doing the work of Band-Aids, of helping the victims. And if I really wanted to get to the essence of at least my country's involvement in these wars, I had to come back to the US and work here. Right. And so I think, you know, our trajectories are very different, but we've come to the same conclusion. And I wonder, in your views around running for Congress, maybe we're in a different moment right now where people are caring about foreign policy, but until this war in Ukraine happened, it's my impression that when there are polls that ask voters what are their most important issues, foreign policy, you know, rarely even appears on the list. And so do you think we're in a different moment now where people really are caring about these issues more?
I think so. And I think, you know, the effects that the war will have on the American economy, you know, and particularly if the United States government and Europe get serious about curtailing Russian oil and gas, then I think that'll have a unmistakable effect on our economy. We've already seen it with this, which is really speculation. And I think people should maybe understand it better in terms of why our gas prices have gone up so much. A lot of this got to do with speculation, but certainly there's an impact on the overall oil market. And, you know, so as we were saying earlier, you know, for someone who is, look, I figured it out the other day. If you are making $15 an hour and you fill your car up once a week, that is half a day's pay to fill your car up. And if you're like many people, where you commute 20 to 30 miles to work or however long, and you've got all kinds of chores and responsibility, you got kids going to karate, you know, another kid going to soccer, you know, you're filling your car up twice a week. If you're making $15 an hour, that's a day's pay. I mean, so the impact that this has on people, and I hate to see the way it is just because the way it gets portrayed as it's Biden's fault, or, well, no, if Trump was here, it'd be this way, you know, because that's so divorced from the reality. But you're right. I mean, that's one thing I think we've seen with the wars. They've been universally unpopular for a long time. I mean, with the beginning of the Afghan war, that war is popular. But then they stop asking about it, and then it's kind of neutral until around 2009. And after 2009, the war is unpopular among Americans forever. Even when things were horrible in Kabul last summer, and 2/3 of Americans said Joe Biden's doing a terrible job with Afghanistan, over 70% still said we should get out of Afghanistan. And the same with the Iraq war and other things. But you're right, it doesn't impact people. So in the top 10 things that voters care about, it, you know, might be 7, 8, 9, 10. But now people are feeling it. And I think I think the importance is to get out to people how this didn't just happen because something occurred in middle February, that this is the result of years, decades of decision by American governments, by NATO governments, by the Russian government, by Ukrainian governments. And one of the things I think is going to be different about this war is everybody has a video camera in this war. In Iraq, really didn't have it. In Afghanistan, it really wasn't that way. So, but in this war, everyone has a video camera. And I think that what we are going to see coming out of this war in Ukraine is going to hopefully make people commiserate with the people who are involved in all aspects, not the leadership, not the oligarchs or the corporations, that are backing these things, but the average person, whether it be a Ukrainian family, whether it be a Russian soldier who thought he was going on a training exercise and now he's shelling Mariupol, right? I mean, so I think that there is an opportunity here for people to understand a connection to others that harkens back to the old internationalism. And the realization that we have to connect across borders. We have to stand up for each other and we have to stand up for ourselves. And, I'm wondering your thoughts on that, what you've seen change in terms of what the technology has brought, how people's understanding, of course, the way the media is, et cetera.
Well, it can go either way. As you know, Matt, we see the Russophobia that is global, and here in our own country, of Russian restaurants being attacked, Russian delis being attacked, Russian students being attacked, Russian cats being not allowed in the International Feline Association, all kinds of ways that this turns into something very personal against the people who have nothing to do with the policies. We've seen that around anti-Asian hate, with the Cold War ramping up on China as well. And so there's that negative part, but there is also, as you said, the compassion that people feel. And it really is amazing how much of an outpouring of support there have been for Ukrainian refugees. And I know many of us ask, well, why not that support for Yemeni refugees from Iraq, from Libya, from all over? But I think what we have to say is that's the model. That's what we want to see for others as well. And I think that, there is some chance that we can make people understand that refugees from war, no matter where they're coming from, even on our southern border, are people who deserve a chance at a better life. So yes, we do have to recognize the hypocrisy, the $1 billion that Biden just announced today for refugees. You don't get that for Yemenis or for any of these other people who've been suffering so much. And the opening up to 100,000 refugees in the United States that he just announced as well. Quite remarkable. And certainly we have to see the racist aspects of this. But it is important to take this opening and try to widen it more. And the same goes for the issue of nuclear weapons. I think people are understanding that, we have all these nuclear weapons, and yet the hawks who want to be giving more military support to Ukraine, who want to be giving those MiG fighter jets, and who want to have the no-fly zone, they realize, Russia has nukes, so we can't really do that. And I wonder, and this is a question to you, Matt, how much do you see this as an opening once this war has ended? And let's just hope that it doesn't end in some kind of nuclear catastrophe. Assuming it doesn't, will there be more of an opening to build a real movement against nuclear weapons that harkens back to the movement that existed in the 1980s, when we were able to get 1 million people out in Central Park in New York to say no to nuclear weapons? Could we possibly build up something like that?
Well, I think we have to. I think it's kind of like our what we're dealing with the climate crisis. We have no alternative. We have to look both sides. And one of the things I think is important, and going back to your comments about the refugees, right on, we should be bringing in 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. We should be doing everything we can for these people, just as we need to be doing the same for people in Muslim nations, for our brothers and sisters in Central America. I mean, we right now have last count I saw was 22,000 refugees and migrants in detention on our southern border. I mean, that's about 7,000 more than Donald Trump did. I mean, so it's not for us to say, well, you didn't do it for them, so we can't do it for these people. We have to say, yes, we need to do it for these people. And we have to help people understand that the compassion that they have for the Ukrainian refugees must be extended, just as we saw people with tremendous compassion for Afghans this past summer and fall, right? We have to have that compassion for all of our brothers and sisters, regardless of the circumstances from which they are fleeing. And to tie the climate crisis into it, right, we know that what we're seeing right now in terms of refugees is nothing compared to what we're going to see when the climate crisis is really hard, pressing on us full bore 20 years or so from now, where we'll have hundreds of millions of refugees. With the nuclear weapons, Medea, yeah, I couldn't be, I think we have done, and I say we, my generation, Generation X, have really let this go. And we've really not picked up what was done before us, and we've let it slide to the point that we have in both the Russian and the American militaries, generals who believe that they possess usable nuclear weapons. I mean, that's not a fringe thing. That's something that's actually in doctrine. We have to remember that both sides in the Cold War, their battle plans called for using nuclear weapons. It wasn't, during the Cold War, both the Warsaw Pact and NATO weren't saying, well, use them as a last resort. Their battle plans called for using nuclear weapons often right away. I mean, so this is a history that exists and that we are continuing in. And that we have to, just as you all did in the 80s with Sane Freeze and getting all those people out, and what that translated into with Reagan Gorbachev and bringing us down from 30,000 nuclear weapons to about 10,000 nuclear weapons. But the reality is that we only need about 100 nuclear weapons to end life on Earth. You know, I mean, that's what all the scientists from, Foundation of Atomic Scientists, Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Physicians for Social Responsibility, all, people who've studied this, that's what they understand, is that the use of 100 nuclear weapons, Hiroshima size, not even the types that we have, like the big megatons, the kiloton size, that's enough to end life on Earth, because the nuclear winter that would ensue from the amount of dust, ash, soot from all the burning cities would cause all our crops to fail. And, the most horrible thing about that is we get to watch the children around us starve to death. And I mean, I think that's a real thing, that looking at what's happening in Ukraine now, looking at the people we have in power, looking at the people who are in power in Russia. And this is why, again, I say we have to really take on this internationalism. I mean, how many tens of thousands of Russians have been arrested for protesting the war? I mean, I know that if Medea Benjamin, you were in Russia, you would be sitting in a jail someplace. I know that. You're absolutely the same people as they are. And those are the people that we have to work with. And so I wonder, because I think people might be interested to know, what type of connections do you have with organizations? What have you all been doing to, reach out a hand to those who are doing the same work that you're doing here, but, on the other side of the world?
We've been doing quite a lot. We have members of Code Pink right now who are involved in humanitarian aid for Ukrainians and are in the region, particularly in Romania right now. We have been reaching out to the anti-war movement in Russia. Earlier on, it was easier to get people to be on webinars and be public. Now it's more dangerous for them, but we keep in touch. And in fact, we've been trying to get visas to send people in to make more direct connection with them. We've been organizing internationally with groups in Europe. There's a one called Stop the War UK, which is a group in the UK that we have been working with for since the time right before the Iraq War, and organizing those massive demonstrations against going to war in Iraq. We're working together with members of the European Parliament and parliaments in Germany, France, Italy, Spain. We've had some international, well, we had one international webinar, and we're planning another where we had members of parliament like Jeremy Corbyn from the UK. And we're part of a No to NATO group that we have been part of for years now, going to the NATO summits and protesting at those summits. And there's, it's going to be a lot harder now, but certainly I think in the long term, it's still an important message and an important mobilizing. You know, our work before this Ukraine attack was with groups that were part of NATO countries to help them to hold the line, to not spend more of their resources on the military. You know, NATO's goal is you spend at least 2% of your gross domestic product on the military. And before the Ukraine invasion, it was only 10 of the 30 countries that achieved that quote goal. And, you know, people in other countries that we work with said, you know, we don't want to achieve that goal. We don't want to be like the United States. We want to spend money on our healthcare systems and on our university education. We don't want indebted young people like you have. So now all of that is unfortunately quickly changing, but we still think it's important to have these international connection. And the last thing on the international connection I want to say is with the environmental movement globally, because I do think there is an opening, maybe not in the short term where there are calls for more production of fossil fuels, but in the medium term and certainly in the long term. And so I put a link to a letter that 200 environmental groups sent to Biden, asking him to use the Defense Production Act to ramp up the deployment of renewable energy, transition the world off fossil fuels, and generate millions of good quality union jobs. And we have been inviting people from that movement onto calls with folks from the Peace movement to really try to merge these two things together. And since there is such a global environmental movement, I think it's a chance for us to really make people not only see how intertwined they are, but actually work together.
Right. And, you know, one of the things I really agree with that. If we're gonna, and the window or opportunity to mitigate the worst of climate change, I think a lot of scientists are saying now that keeping it at 1.5 degrees warming is just not going to happen, that we're looking at 2, and the consequences of 2 are catastrophic. I mean, it's cataclysmic. But, you know, the report that came out this week said that to keep it at 1.5, the wealthy nations of the world need to cut their fossil fuel emissions in half by 2034. So in less than 12 years. And in order to do that, just the scale of that, we have to use something like the Defense Production Act. We have to just in the same way that our nation, other nations have nationalized industries in order to meet emergencies or crises or wars, we have to do the same to just do the sheer amount of economic transformation that's going to be required for this. And so absolutely. And, you know, you look at the amount we spend on the military, and you know this better than anyone. And one of the things I noted last week was when the COVID bill, the $22 billion COVID bill was left out of the $1.5 trillion federal spending, half of which goes to the Defense Department. That 22 billion, which they say they could have gotten by with 15 billion. Well, $15 billion is what one aircraft carrier costs. Wow. It's what one Columbia class submarine costs. We have submarines that cost as much as aircraft carriers do, right? Our newest B-21 bombers are $2 billion each. We're going to buy 100 of those things, right? And we couldn't get $15 billion to do all the things necessary to protect us from COVID. something that's killed, in the next 3 weeks, we'll hit 1 million dead from COVID, in 2 years.
Well, and to plan ahead for the future, Matt, because we know that these things are going to keep coming at us. And if we can't put the resources in to not only deal with what we're dealing with today, but to plan for the future, what kind of national security is that?
Right. And who out there is killing 1 million Americans? I mean, it's really quite simple. You look at the effects of the climate crisis that is already hitting us. And that's what the scientists are saying. The scientists say, yeah, we got it all wrong. We're way too conservative in our modeling. It's coming harder and faster than we expected. And we see that here. I see that here in North Carolina. I mean, you see it down in Florida, or up in DC or wherever, people are at. We see it, in North Carolina, we got 2 once in a century hurricanes in 5 years. We're looking at in about 20, 25 years, we're going to lose a dozen or so, maybe 2 dozen towns on our outer banks because they will be submerged because of sea level rise. I mean, I was just in Elizabeth City, which is a port town in the eastern part of North Carolina, talking to some folks there about it. And yeah, I mean, what they're talking about is, okay, we're going to have to pick up our downtown and move it in 15 or so years. Pick up the downtown and move it. How's that going to happen if we don't start planning for those things now? Because I'm not even talking about transitioning from fossil fuels. I'm talking about what are we going to do societal wise, our societal infrastructure to survive this. We're talking about towns having to pick up their downtowns and move them. Not one, everyone on the coast is going to have to do that. I mean, so how do we do that? And then how do we have the economic protections for workers so that people are able to survive that transition? We already have an economy where people are suffering because of lack of healthcare, lack of housing. Education costs are obscene, and of course, wages don't pay enough. So on and on. Before we go to questions, I did have one question for you that is kind of a little off topic. Kind of goes back to something you mentioned earlier. And it's kind of a little more lighthearted than what we're talking about now. But it's important, though, because I think what you all at Code Pink do and do so well is you get people's attention. And you do it in a way that is theatrical in the best use of that term. I think a lot of people understand politics as theater, but I think you all at Code Pink do it in a way that really grabs people's attention and makes them notice. And it's very poignant. It's always very poignant. I get choked up sometimes because what you all do with the theater, if you will, that you present when you do your actions, you're representing the voiceless. When you do an action, and for me, it's important because I know I've seen the people that we've killed overseas. So when I see it, it affects me greatly. So I want to thank you for that ability for you all to do that, to represent those people in a way that has an effect on others. But I wanted to ask you, your thoughts on that. But more pointedly, I always want to ask Code Pink people, because I've been up in your attic at the Code Pink house in DC. And folks who don't know, Code Pink house, the attic is full of all their old props and costumes, and it's just absolutely fantastic. But so kind of a more serious question on your thoughts on the use of that type of theater to achieve effects like you all do, but then also to a more lighthearted one. What's your favorite costume? What was your favorite event? Like, what was what's the favorite dress up thing you did, kind of?
Well, we have a bunch of costumes that are the Code Pink police, and they're pink police, and they've got the police caps, kind of pink, and we've got our whistles, and it's really sort of fun when we go to Congress and the Capitol Police are confronting us. We're like, well, wait, we're the Code Pink police. And we've gotten into quite a nice rapport with a lot of those Capitol Police, because, they know, unlike the January 6th people, we are totally nonviolent. And while sometimes they have to arrest us to do their job, a lot of times they're very gentle with us. So I guess I like the Code Pink police. I won't tell on this the one that I really like because I'm not sure it's the right venue for that, but it has to do with women's private parts.
I know exactly. There's a good story about our good friend Ann Wright and that costume. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. People can message me afterwards, and I can explain the story. Yeah.
So I love. We did a lot of costumes of billionaires for Bush kind of thing, and we dress up in our gowns and go into hearings in Congress dressed up as gowns. And, you know, when we go with things that say things on us, they say, no, you can't wear that. That's not legal, whatever. So, you know, we go in with the guys with top hats and tuxedos and wearing our gowns, and we just have little things that say billionaires for Bush. Those were kind of fun. We're always looking for ways to kind of get around the rules. But in this thing about theater, you know, sometimes we do very, very serious theater, like we've done a replay of a wedding party in Yemen being hit, and we recreated that in front of the White House with people in the wedding dresses, and we brought chairs and we had the families, you know, sitting down there, and we simulated the whole thing and videotaped it, and it was really, really a very impactful way of just, you know, getting across this horror that drone attacks or bombs come in and wipe out a wedding. But I was talking to somebody today, Matthew, and it was about his desire to use more music, culture, art, poetry in building this peace movement. And I think that is so essential, especially to get young people involved. And we talked about something that existed 20 years ago, which was Artists Against the War. And I think now we need a global Artists Against War in general. And really get some people who can attract crowds, so that when we do things at the White House or wherever we are, we're not 50 people, or if we're lucky, 100 people. We start getting into the thousands because people come because they want to hear somebody that they love and they love their music. And I think that's absolutely critical for us to do as we move forward in this issue around Ukraine, not knowing how it's going to evolve, and it being difficult right now because the ones who have the energy for larger protests are Ukrainian Americans who want the no-fly zone. They want more weapons. They, you know, we understand where they're coming from, but it's not those of us in an anti-war movement who want to see de-escalation negotiations. So the space is not there for us right this moment, but I think it will be soon.
Yeah, I want to say I've taken part in a number of things you all have done. I'm remembering right now one we did in the I think it was the Hart Senate office building about 4 years ago or so, maybe, where we remembered the children who were killed in a Saudi airstrike on a Yemeni bus. More than 40 children killed by American provided bombs, dropped by American provided planes that are serviced by American technicians on the ground in Saudi Arabia. At that point, they were probably refueled in the air by American tanker aircraft. And so to stand in the Senate with the faces of these children on placards, and you know, that's really important to do. That's for them and for us. It's very important to do. So yeah, the poignancy. But then I've also seen I know what you're talking about with the cordiality you have with the Capitol Police, because I've walked into the Congress a few times with some of your folks, and the Capitol Police recognize you guys right away. And it's always, are you getting arrested today? Do I need to call someone to make sure we got the, you know, no, we're just here to, you know, go see and talk to somebody, you know. But yeah, it's what you all do is really important. And, you know, one, I think for remembering those who otherwise are not going to be remembered. And then on the other is for making us remember, including people who don't want to remember. So when you guys stand up and you in the middle of hearings and you make people remember that people have died because of the policies, because of the people who have directed those policies, that's so important. So I'm grateful for that. And again, a lot of why I'm here is because of what you've done. So thank you. And I know Rose wanted to start with the questions now, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Great discussion. Thank you both so much. So George Clark has a question that either one of you or both of you can answer this. How do you overcome defense contractors' death grip on the American economy, Wall Street to Main Street? Isn't militarism the economic engine of America? Good question.
Yeah, go ahead, Medea.
Well, if we had the answer, we'd be in a better shape than we are now. So I think it is, the key question. Some of the things that we've been doing at Code Pink, we have a campaign called Divest from the War Machine. And it's really modeled after what the great work done around fossil fuels of getting, in that case, trillions of dollars out of investments in fossil fuels and trying to move them to renewable energy. In this case, it's a website that we set up, Divest from the War Machine, and we ask people to look at their pension funds, their city funds, their universities, their own investments, to see how they might be invested in weapons companies, and to do campaigns to divest from those. And that's been a great learning process for people as well. And related to that is a campaign to ask Congress people and people running for Congress. So I can ask you, Matthew Ho, we have a question and we have a pledge asking people to pledge not to take money from the top 5 weapons companies. And you probably know which 5 they are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I won't take money. It doesn't, not even the top 5. I mean, I won't take money from any of them. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm happy to sign it.
Great. Well, we will send it to you and put you up there as our latest member who has taken that pledge. It's important. And so far, we only have a couple of dozen Congress people. And, even just in the Progressive Caucus, there are almost 100 Congress people. We should have them all. But unfortunately, about half of them vote for the bloated Pentagon budget every year. So they have not yet taken the pledge. But so those are some kinds of things in answer to that question. But I'd love to hear your answer, Matthew.
Well, I remember you all did a hearing on endless wars a number of years ago, and a lot of members of Congress attended. And when they left, you asked them, will you sign this pledge? And not many did. I remember that was a that was a really salient thing for me. I think for this, as in so many other things, it comes back to the money in politics, the capture of our politics by money, that until members of Congress are able to vote either on their conscience or on the needs of their constituents, we are going to have this problem. And I think it's a worsening problem because the sectors of the economy that control our government, I feel, are narrowing and narrowing. And I follow the economist Michael Hudson. He writes about this a lot, how you can really look at it, the military industrial complex, the oil, gas, and minerals complex, and the finance, insurance, and real estate complex as 3 of the most important industrial sectors that control policy, especially foreign policy. And you see the relationship that you have, you were bringing it up before, Medea, about because of this war in Ukraine now, nations all throughout Europe are saying, okay, we'll spend 2% of GDP on our military. Germany's going to do it. That's going to make Germany the 3rd biggest military in the world because they're going to do this. Germany just said that they're going to buy, I forget how many F-35, right? Over $100 million a plane. Germany's going to do that. So, that connection between the fossil fuel interests, the military industrial complex, and the banks, right? The larger finance sector, it's all intertwined. We have to remember that the Department of Defense is the biggest customer of ExxonMobil. So there's a relationship here that is a network by money, and that money has its hooks into the Congress. And until we remove that money, I think we're really going to be kind of chipping away at it, and we're going to be making gains, and we're going to lose sometimes, and we're going to deal with this dissonance, this insanity that says, look, we're spending almost $800 billion a year on our military, more when you add in all the other aspects. So we spend really over $1 trillion a year on our military. Well, that didn't stop Russia from invading Ukraine, so we need to spend more, right? I mean, like, we look how good the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen and Somalia and sub-Saharan Africa and Pakistan and everywhere else, how well those wars went. So the solution is to spend more money. You know, even though we've spent $14 trillion since 2001 on our military. So yeah, I really, for me, to get back to it, it comes back to that question of money and politics, and divesting, as you said, I think is really one of the key answers. So George, thanks for that. And people, George is a former journalist out in Iowa. He hosts a podcast called Podcast by George. I'm a guest on it a lot. I'm sure he'd love to have Medea on sometime. And so people give George's podcast a listen. A lot of what I know because of what George talks about on his show.
Thank you so much, both of you. And the next question we have is from Daniel Shea. It's addressed to Matt. Matt, could you talk about how that since Trump's billionaires' friends wrote up the Mission Act, which is still active to outsource veteran health care, meaning to privatize the Veterans Administration, how there should be Medicare for all?
Sure. And yeah, and thanks, Dan. Dan's a member of Veterans for Peace. He was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, combat veteran, carried a M60 machine gun, and he's a good friend to me. And the Mission Act, as Dan said, it really outsourced the Veterans Administration. After the Pentagon, the Veterans Administration is the second largest agency by money in the federal government. So it's a cash cow, right? People can see that and they want it. And so what we've been seeing over the last couple decades really has been even as the VA's budget has increased to more than $200 billion a year, there's been an under-resourcing. So you have this situation where the VA is receiving, again, more than $200 billion a year, when 15 years ago it was receiving about 65 or $70 billion, if I remember correctly. But they are not filling 50,000 vacancies at the VA. So you have like the typical, I think, that the policy of like under-resourced the government function. Everyone complains about it. They say, well, we're paying our taxes for, and then you're able to outsource it. And I think that's been a deliberate thing with the VA. There has been a lot of outcry about VA services. There's been some scandals, if you will. And so there has been a re-emphasis, but there also too is this desire to outsource it because, yeah, again, it's a cash cow. You know, one of the things why I'm such a believer in Medicare for all is because I am fortunate to be fully covered by the Veterans Administration. I do not have to worry about my health care. And I receive great health care from the VA. No matter what people say, I receive great health care. They're under-resourced, but once you're in the system, generally you get very good health care. And I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry that I've only got $300 in my checking account. I can't afford to go to the doctor. I don't have to, I'm not someone who says, you know, I got to max out my deductible until I start going to get the services I need, right? And you see that happen. People end up going to the doctor more often in November and December after they've filled out their deductible because they can't afford to go to it earlier in the year. You know, so that's where I come to from Medicare for all, as well as seeing, again, plenty of people in my life who are suffering because they don't have the health care they need, or they have to make that dangerous choice of, if I spend this money I may not have a positive balance in my checking account at the end of the month, or I know others, people who say, okay, I'll insure my children, but I can't insure myself. And it really is for some, what I've seen, the help I've received in my life, people know I'm very open about my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health issues. I'm here because of the Veterans Administration. I'm alive because of that. And it's because those services were available to me. So certainly, keeping the VA public and accessible to veterans, but then expanding that so that all people have health care, cradle to grave, no charge, at point of service, covering everything, et cetera, et cetera. That's really important to me.
Thank you. And it's very important to so many of us. Just saying, I experienced some of the worst of the for-profit healthcare system when my husband passed of COVID last September.
Oh, so sorry to hear that. How awful.
And it was COVID that he caught within the hospital system. Would not vaccinate him and would keep telling him to go to Publix or Walgreens, but my husband was sick and could not stand, let alone leave the hospital to do that. So I've really seen, I'm just interjecting here just because this is personal to me, just how much human damage comes of the capitalist for-profit healthcare system. And so candidates like you who are going to fight for Medicare for all, it's so very important. So thank you. And let me get our next question. This is from somebody who I am going to apologize in advance for probably mispronouncing his name, but the name is Nikhila Ananda. And again, if I got that wrong, I'm so sorry. Thanks for all you're both doing for the Green Party of the United States and for the people of the United States and the world. Would wish to hear from both of you what specifically you would recommend now for what's occurring in the Ukraine, preferably not generalities, specific suggestions.
Well, can I, before we answer that, I see that there's also in the chat by the same person saying Medicare for all is not good enough. Right. And, I used to think before I was on Medicare, oh, come on, it's good. It's not going to be perfect. And now that I'm on Medicare, I realize how bad it is, really. Yeah. So they are saying in here, single payer. I don't know if, people understand what single payer healthcare means or universal healthcare or whatever, but it really is kind of a shock to those of us who get of the age where we can have Medicare and we're thinking, oh, right, smooth sailing from here on, and realize that it's not only do you not get hearing and dental and visual, but you also, I went to see a gynecologist the other day and they said, we won't take you because Medicare doesn't pay us. So anyway, it's not good enough. A national health service is needed. Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
On that last question, the outlines of a negotiated solution are pretty much there. It's not rocket science that there needs to be a neutral Ukraine. And what does neutrality mean? Well, we have examples. There's the example of Austria that has been a neutral country since 1955. We have the example of Sweden being a neutral country from back in the 19th century. It means that you have a limited military. It means you don't have foreign military bases. It means you don't join foreign military alliances. And of course, we need Russian troop removal. We need a ceasefire immediately. But we also need to have some solution for the regions of the Donbass, which exist in the framework of the Minsk II agreements that were hammered out in 2015, but not adhered to. And if there would be more guarantees to make sure that was adhered to, I think that could be a framework for that region. Crimea, it's seen by many as already a Russian territory. You're not going to go back on that, although some are saying there needs to be a internationally supervised elections there, but there were elections, so I don't know. There's solutions to those, and I think that the question is how much emphasis is there going to be on the urgent need for a negotiated solution. And when I see Biden going to NATO and meeting with the G7, I don't hear that up at the top of the list. What I hear is we're giving more weapons, more weapons. We've now given $2 billion worth of weapons since Biden has come in. I don't see the call for by Zelensky, who is, said it and then taken it back. I mean, he said, yes, now we recognize we won't be part of NATO. And then he's turned around and said, but we won't relinquish any part of Ukraine. So there has to be compromises on all sides for this to end. And there has to be an acceptance by the United States that Ukraine has to compromise. And I think the US is one of the holdouts in this, of pushing for a, quote, military solution.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better. I'm very afraid that there are, well, let me first say that the only thing I know for certain is that this won't go the way or end the way anyone tells you does. Right. That's just the way, that's the nature of warfare. And the more the war is broadened, the more violent it gets, the more uncontrollable it gets, and the outcomes become even harder to imagine. So every day this conflict goes on, the results, the consequences are incalculable. The idea that somehow this conflict is going to go on and Zelensky is going to be in power 2 years from now, I just don't know how anyone can look back at wars and say, oh yeah, sure, no problem. That's how it'll work out. I would, and my friend George, who just asked that question, he said this months ago. He said, why isn't Biden getting on a plane and going and dealing with this? This is what we elected the guy for. And it's absolutely the case. If I was able to talk with President Putin, I would say, look, man, I've seen it. I know exactly what you are in for if you stay in Ukraine. There is nothing but sadness and anger and frustration and humiliation coming out of this occupation. And it will destroy you, because unlike the United States, which has the world's biggest economy, all these resources, and most importantly, the world's reserve currency, so we can just spend as much as we want, Russia does not have that. They cannot sustain an occupation like the United States did in Afghanistan or Iraq. They just cannot do it. And so that would be my comments to Putin. My comments to President Zelensky would be like, look, I've seen it. They are going to let your country become Afghanistan. They're going to let your country become Syria, become Iraq. Your people will continue to die to maintain American credibility. There is no weapons that we can give the Ukrainians that will defeat the Russians. There's nothing. All we can do is give them weapons that prolong the stalemate. And what many American officials want, and you've heard this, even Hillary Clinton said this, the model is Afghanistan in the 80s. Right. The model is to suck the Russians in and to bleed them through occupation. And hey, just like in Afghanistan, where at least 1 million people died, and where 13,000 newborns died in 2 months this year already because their mothers are malnourished, but if that happens, we need to maintain American credibility. And that's what we will do to the Ukrainians. So as Medea said, there's already a framework for this. And it's making sure the Russians understand that the occupation will only end in their own sorrow and their own humiliation, and eventually the occupation will self-destruct on its own. How many millions of Ukrainians will suffer before that happens then? And for the Ukrainians to know, look, the Americans, no matter what they're whispering in your ear, we're not coming to save you. The 1st Armored Division is not going to roll into Ukraine and fight and knock out the Soviets or knock out the Russians. You know, I mean, but we're so imbued, I think, because I just had a slip of the tongue and said Soviets, with our own romantical history of the Cold War, that this is how we're seeing things. And I think it's really important for voices like Medea, voices like Code Pink, voices like Veterans for Peace and Peace Action, all these other groups out there, the Green Party, to be strong and knowledgeable voices of dissent and providing alternatives, as well as, you know, explaining to people, this is what the outcome is going to be like if you persist in this. So it's how do you get to that? First thing is a ceasefire, and then getting to that structured agreement that Medea was explaining, where it's a negotiation, it's a compromise. Not everyone's gonna be happy, but Putin has to understand that this will be his downfall, and Zelensky needs to understand that this will be the destruction of his country if this continues. I don't, you know, I won't go into it too much more, but yeah, I mean, I think it's important, as we said earlier, that everyone in Ukraine has one of these things, and that will undo Russia. The video of their boys and girls being killed on the streets of Ukraine will undo them in a way that, you know, should have happened much faster to the American occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, we're not going to be able to get to everybody's questions, but somebody named Allison Biddick, I think this is an important question for both of you to address. And I think not just for millennials, but also what we're calling Generation Z. As a younger millennial, she says, who grew up in the shadow of constant military-industrial complex propaganda, how would you suggest I demilitarize my mind? I want to give peace a chance, but it's hard for me to envision a future where it's an option, especially considering capitalism and climate change. Great question, Allison.
Why don't you start this one, Matthew? You're younger than me.
No, I'm not, gosh, you know, first of all, I think, you know, I look at I'm a Generation X, and, you know, I think in the 90s, we were very disengaged politically. There certainly were people in my generation but, you know, when I was in college in the early 90s, it just didn't have the political engagement that that previous generations had, or these current generations do. And I think this idea of demilitarizing your mind, Allison, I think you're already on the right track. You know, I mean, you're here talking to us, so obviously, you know, I mean, but the fact that you have this self-awareness, this desire to explore things and be, you know, intellectually and morally honest. I mean, I find those are the things that's most important for me, is that intellectual and moral honesty. When I talked earlier about being at that Code Pink event 11 years ago and seeing that in front of me, and, you know, okay, you know, and other, you know, that's important. How do you sustain it? And I understand what you mean by being propagandized, because I went to a very good public high school, and I graduated as the history honor student. You know, I was the history nerd of my class. And then I went to a very good private college, and I was able to go through those experiences without ever having read any Chomsky or Zinn or Angela Davis, or, you know, certainly we read like Martin Luther King's The Letter from the Birmingham Jail, but we certainly didn't read his Beyond Vietnam sermon, you know? So those types of things, you know, I'm sure you've already exposed yourself to it, but, you know, I think what's important for you now is helping others demilitarize. And I think it's really important to meet people where they're at. And, you know, particularly, I think with so much of the propaganda about this war, about all wars, getting people to understand it's not about two sides. It's not red versus blue. There is a lot of nuance, there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of history to this. And that, as our friend David Swanson says, in terms of wars, blame is like sunshine. Just because I'm standing outside and you walk outside as well doesn't take any sunshine away from me. And when David says that, I really get that. So, helping people understand that. And I think, Allison, as you go forward with helping others understand, then of course that will help you further demilitarize your mind. And I love that saying, and thank you for saying that. And thank you for being here with us tonight.
Yeah, I love that as well. I've been wanting to write a book called The Occupation of the American Mind, but I like yours better. It's a more liberating one, the demilitarization. And I think back in my own trajectory, sometimes I really like to be associated with, I'm an atheist, total atheist, and I loved being close to people in faith-based communities that really had that kind of spiritual depth about peace and compassion, whether it's groups like the Catholic Workers or the Quakers or the Black liberation churches. Sometimes I find it's very a kind of liberating feeling to be around people like that, who have that as their daily faith. I'm working with a group now of Muslims, and to see them have what's called zakat, which is when you're supposed to put a certain amount of money aside to give to the poorest. And going around with them while they do that is quite a liberating feeling of, yes, we can be at one with those who are most dispossessed in our society. And sometimes it's getting out of the United States and being in other countries that is a liberating feeling. Mm-hmm. I was just recently invited to a peace conference in a small town in France, and it was the most beautiful, just wonderful feeling where I just felt this load off of me of the US kind of empire by seeing people in this community who had come together for a week of activities with young people, older people, and they had the day of theater, and they had movies for peace, and they had picnics and all kinds of things. And it was very lovely. I also go to Cuba, and I think it's a great place to go just to see things through different eyes. Not saying that it's the best, but I love it. I love the dance. I love the music. I love the spirit. And I love not seeing advertising. And I love not seeing a chain store of a McDonald's or a Kentucky Fried Chicken down every street. I see Allison says going to Cuba is one of my goals. Okay, there's a lot of ways to go, Allison. I'll put my email in the chat because there are many, many different ways to go, and it's it's good to see the good and bad of all societies, but it does give you an openness about how societies can be different, and if we didn't attack them so much, we would have a lot more examples of interesting, different societies that would give us very mind-expanding ideas of how we could live together in a better way.
All right, thank you both so much. And before closing remarks, hold on one moment while I remove spotlights here. I'm having a spotlight for everyone. Does that work? My apologies.
I think that's it. That what you're looking for?
That's it.
There we go.
My apologies for taking a moment there. But before closing remarks, I want to talk about something that's really important. One thing in my 30 years in politics that I can't get people excited over, because the subject is not sexy. It is not a sexy political topic, but the topic is ballot access. And what people don't understand about ballot access is that it is a way that the US political halls of power, the Democrats and Republicans and the millionaires and billionaires who own this system, who are, you know, behind putting massive amount of money into it, keep candidates like Matthew Ho off the ballot. They keep candidates who represent us, who represent peace, who represent prosperity for the American people, from getting on the ballot by making it prohibitively difficult to do. Right now, we need 14,000 signatures to get on the ballot. But the reality is we need closer to 20,000 signatures to get on the ballot. Why? Because the state will not take every signature. You know, they won't verify all of them. So we're looking at getting something in the ballpark of a 75% approval rate. So that means we need the money to do this. We need the resources to do this. COVID has made it more difficult for reasons you might understand. It is harder to get people to go out into the streets when people are fearing COVID. So, you know, there's some brave souls out there who are doing it, but it's a hard thing to achieve. And that's why we need you to donate and spread the word around this campaign and get others to donate, because they've got the big money behind them. They've got the real money behind them. And they, you know, essentially are taking our futures from us. Somebody like Allison, who, you know, is, you know, just thinking about our future and how to demilitarize our minds, how to get our climate to a place where we're not in mortal danger, how the average American can get health care and human needs and housing, you know, met. And we need people like Matthew Ho, not just on the ballot, but we need him to be the next senator from North Carolina, people. We need this. So get on out there, and I'm going to leave the link again because I keep leaving it, and I'm going to keep leaving it. Please donate as generously as possible. Share this link with everyone you know. Share this campaign with everyone you know. And let's put Matthew Ho in the US Senate, okay? Come on. Now, with that said, I will give the floor over to Matt and Medea. Medea, if you'd like to start, and just for closing remarks. And thank you all so much for being here tonight. And it was an honor to host such distinguished guests. And
Well, thank you. And that was great, Rose. And I just, you know, the Congress has been closed during COVID, and they just announced that there was going to be an opening for tourists. And I'm not quite sure what it means. I'm not sure if I could get in as a tourist, but, you know, I will try. But just the thought of being able to go into the Senate and see and go visit Matt in his office would be so mind-blowing and fantastic. So I'm really just delighted that you're running, Matthew, and delighted to be the first guest in this format in your campaign. As soon as we hang up, I'm going to make sure I donate to the campaign, and hope everybody that's listening will do that too. Just hearing you tonight is very inspirational.
Well, thanks, Medea. Yeah, no, if I'm in the Senate, there'll be a desk for a Code Pink person in my office. That's for sure.
We can be embedded.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, no, I mean, that's part of the staff, you know. You have a lot of good people. I mean, I've been so impressed with the folks you've had. But just before we go, why don't you let people know how people can get involved with some of the work that you're doing, particularly as people are concerned about what's happening, not just in Ukraine, but, throughout the Muslim world, where bombs keep falling, as well as the work that you do here within the US.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We're supposed to be pushing you tonight, Matthew, but I'll put the Code Pink website in there. And yes, we have weekly alerts that have given people a lot of good ideas about what to do on issues, including Ukraine right now.
Well, yeah. And I appreciate everyone being here tonight. Medea, thank you so much. And Rose as well for this. Ray McGovern said to me, folks who know Ray, former CIA analyst who's been part of our anti-war, human rights, pro-peace community for a long time now. But, Ray said to me, early on when I started doing this stuff, he said, not sure how much change you're going to see, Matt, but I can tell you one thing, you're going to be around a lot of good people. And that's how I feel tonight. That's how I feel throughout this campaign. I want to, again, extend my appreciation to everyone on my campaign staff who put this together, but everyone else who showed up tonight and is watching. And just to echo what Rose said, ballot access, if we don't get on the ballot, this campaign is over. So this is an urgent thing for us. Appreciate anything anyone can do. One thing I will say that I have noticed in terms of fundraising is if you send personal emails to people and say, hey, I'm supporting Matthew Ho's campaign because that seems to work very well. So in addition to donating, if you can extend personally to others about this campaign, that would be incredibly helpful. And if people are interested in petitioning, if you're here in North Carolina, but also if you're outside of North Carolina, you want to join our campaign, come down here, help us petition, get signatures, we will get you down here. Okay, we will take care of costs and other things and get you here, as well as put you up and take care of you while you're here, because we need your help. So again, thank you everyone for being here tonight. Medea, Rose, thank you again. And much love to everybody. I mean, I feel I'm getting, anyone who knows me knows I don't have a problem running my mouth, but I'm having problems running it right now because I'm feeling a little overwhelmed with what this all means. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. This was great.
Thank you. And I'm just putting my email in one last time because apparently I did it wrong. Because I'm doing multitask. It's a long email address though. Okay. Rose@MatthewHoforSenate.org. Please be in touch. Let's talk about ways to get this out there. Thank you both so much. And everybody, you have a wonderful evening. Thank you both so much for doing this. Good night, all.
Good night.